Hi there, this is our third video that's dedicated to outlining some of the rules and regulations for building a garden suite in a specific city in Ontario. Today we're going to be covering Hogtown, the Big Smoke, the Six, also known as Toronto, Ontario. After a few minor speed bumps, garden suites are finally here in the city, and it's now legal to build them on many properties across the city. Stick around to the end of this video as we're going to show you how you can determine if your property is eligible for a garden suite in the backyard, and how you can obtain a free report from us to determine eligibility for a property that you own, so stay tuned. Welcome back, I'm Andy from Suite Additions, where we help homeowners and investors build better homes while creating lasting wealth with legal additional suites. Download our free guides at www.suiteadditions.com to get started. And we just put together a brand new garden suites guide, how to add one to your property, now available to download for free. Link is in the description below. And please do us a huge favor by giving us a thumbs up on this video and also subscribing to this channel so we can get more content out. Okay, so at a high level, garden suites are also known as coach houses, backyard homes, and detached accessory dwelling units. But in Toronto, they are officially known as garden suites. And because of policy changes province-wide, these are now being allowed in many cities and towns across Ontario. There are numerous benefits to garden suites, such as providing more affordable housing units, and it's a great option for family members to live close together. And is also a great investment for homeowners and small investors because you're building on land that you already own. Again, you can have a family member live in it or rent it out to either long-term or short-term tenants, such as through Airbnb. You can even downsize and move into it yourself, rent out your main house to make more money, and this will allow you to simplify your life and free up more time and money for travel and other hobbies you enjoy. So in this series, we're going to outline 5 important rules specific to each city for garden suites. These include zoning requirements, minimum lot sizes, maximum unit sizes, height restrictions, and parking requirements. There are many other factors to consider, so be aware that what we have here is just a summary. So don't rely on this information to make any real estate decisions. Okay, so I'm standing in front of a nice residential neighborhood in the heart of Toronto. Toronto is, of course, the business, cultural, technology, and economic center of Canada. The city is home to 2.8 million residents, with the GTA at 6.2 million, and it's expected to hit 9 million by 2041. Toronto is considered one of the most multicultural cities in the world, with the majority of the population being foreign-born. On any given day in Toronto, you may hear one of the many hundreds of languages being spoken. There's a ton of construction going on everywhere, and the already impressive skyline is about to look a lot different in a few years. The Greater Toronto region is the fastest growing region in all of North America, with around 100,000 new residents every year. There's also a ton of transportation projects going on, with billions being invested in trains, subways, and new roads. Now, with all of this activity and growth, of course, comes the issue of housing, and in terms of housing affordability, Toronto is one of the worst in the world. One problem we face here is that much of the growth and density is happening in a very small, already dense parts of the city, with many condos and towers being built in these areas. The vast majority of the city is dominated by low-density, single-family homes, known loosely as neighborhoods or the Yellow Belt. And one of the ways the city is trying to tackle the affordability crisis is by allowing densification in these areas with an initiative called the Expanding Housing Options in Neighborhoods, or EHON for short. Basically implementing missing middle housing options across the city. A key strategy in this initiative is about allowing garden suites as third or even fourth units on what was originally a single-family property. This is in line with the Provincial Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choice Act that was passed in 2019. The garden suite bylaw has been in the works for a couple of years now and finally got the green light to move ahead this spring. Right now I'm standing in front of an awesome Laneway home close to the core of the city. Toronto has allowed Laneway homes for several years now, which was an important step forward for enabling homes to be built in your backyard. Now, it laid the groundwork for the garden suite policy. The difference, however, with Laneway homes is that you need an actual laneway behind your house. This really limited many properties from being eligible. Since most homes don't have a laneway behind them, the new garden suite policy allows many regular detached homes, semi-detached homes, and even street townhouses to be eligible to have a garden suite as long as you're able to meet the bylaws. Okay, so let's have a look at some of those bylaw requirements right now. Before we jump into the 5 considerations, it's important to know that Toronto is made up of the former 6 municipalities to form a single city, including the former city of Toronto, Etobicoke, York, East York, North York, and Scarborough. The new garden suite bylaw is applicable to all of these former cities, basically Metro Toronto. So now let's jump into the 5 important considerations for building garden suites in the city. Now, in terms of zoning, it's important to first know that you can legally build a secondary suite in the residential detached and residential semi-detached areas for 2 units inside the existing building, and now an additional unit in a detached building for 3 units in total. If you're located in the residential R zone, you can potentially add 2 secondary suites for 3 units inside the existing building and a 4th unit as the garden suite. This really helps to increase the density in many areas. So garden suites now are permitted in all residential zones across the city. In terms of the lot size for building a garden suite, there is no stated minimum. However, you want to have a decent sized lot to allow for a reasonably sized garden suite. It's ideal to have a deeper lot where possible. A larger and a deeper lot will be more conducive to building a good sized garden suite with appropriate separation to the main house, which we'll discuss next. Now, in terms of the size of the garden suite, the footprint cannot exceed 60 square meters, roughly 640 square feet. And it cannot exceed 40% of the rear yard, whichever happens to be smaller. Also, the interior floor area of a garden suite must be less than the gross floor area of the main house. Additionally, all ancillary buildings, including garages, sheds, and the garden suite itself, cannot exceed 20% of the total lot area. Now, the good news is that you can also have a basement space. You can even potentially have a 2nd story as long as you are far enough away from the main house. This segues us into height, which we'll discuss next. How high your garden suite can be depends on the separation between the suite and the main house. It can be a maximum of 4 meters, roughly 13 feet, if it is 5 meters from the main house, which is around 17 feet. However, it can be 6 meters high, roughly 20 feet, if it's at least 7.5 meters from the main house. This means you can potentially build a 2-story garden suite that's almost 1,300 square feet as long as the garden suite is more than 25 feet away from the main. That's a really good sized home here in Toronto. Now, keep in mind that depending on the distance, you may be subject to angular plane requirements as well on the 2nd story. Finally, let's talk about parking requirements. I have great news for you. Additional parking for cars is not required when you're building a garden suite. You are, however, required to provide parking for 2 bicycles, which is much easier than providing parking for cars. Depending on the location of your property, you may still wish to provide parking, as that is still a nice amenity for any occupants living there, but at least you're not required to, and you have more flexibility on how you want to design it. Okay, so that covers the 5 main items. A few other items I'd like to mention. You need to have proper setbacks from the lot line, and the setback requirements will depend on the size of your lot, but generally will be at least 1.5 meters or 5 feet away. If you have an existing garage that you wish to convert, that is possible as well, as long as the garage is in good structural condition. And the good news is that the existing setbacks for the garage can remain as long as you're not tearing it down and the garage had a permit when it was built. From a fire safety and emergency access standpoint, you can only have a maximum 45-meter travel distance from the street to the garden suite, which is around 147 feet. And a minimum width of 1 meter clearance to access the garden suite from the side of the house, which is around 40 inches. The last item I want to mention is tree protection. The City of Toronto is very strict on the unnecessary removal of trees for building garden suites, even if the tree is on your property. So if there's a tree that is in the way, you need to discuss what the options are with the city. Okay, so now we've covered many of the main things that are of concern. There's a lot more due diligence that needs to be done. This is just a highlight of the main items. Now remember not to rely on this information. Do your due diligence with the city as things can change. Now before we wrap up, we'd like to let you know that for a limited time, we're currently offering a free quick assessment report on the feasibility of a garden suite for a property that you own in Toronto. Now, if you're interested in finding out if your property qualifies, go to www.suiteadditions.com/garden suites, fill out the form, and we'll definitely get back to you. And don't forget to download our new free garden suites guide to learn about the process and how to get started with garden suites to generate income or use it for your own family. Okay, so what are your thoughts on garden suites in Toronto? Do you think it's a good idea? Would you like to build one here? Do you have any questions or comments? Share them below and we'll definitely get back to you. Also, to get a better high-level overview of garden suites, check out our video, Garden Suite Basics, What You Need to Know. Now, we hope that you found this video to be useful and look forward to seeing you build one of these in Toronto. And we'll be back showcasing another city in Ontario very soon. Thanks for watching. I'm Andy from Suite Additions. Keep creating better homes and generating lasting wealth. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching our video. We have a brand new garden suite guide, how to add one to your property. You can download a copy right now for free if you go to www.suiteadditions.com. We cover a ton of stuff you need to know if you want to start building these to create more housing and wealth at the same time. There's also a list of resources that we've identified that you can use. Download your copy now for free at www.sweetadditions.com.